Hello, I'm Izzy. I've been a THT staff member for over a year now, working as an online therapist. And I'm here today to do a creative exercise for the Wellbeing Week. So thank you so much, Joe, for asking me to do this. We're going to try this video format. I'm interested to find out how you find it after you've tried it. Hoping it's successful. But this is all new to me, this style, so bear with me and I'll do my best to talk you through a relaxing, grounding, creative session today. Now the aim is to bring you into the present moment and to help sort of release some of the busy thoughts that might be going on in your head at the moment, to give you some time out to just relax and really focus on the moment and the task in hand, the creative activity that we're going to be doing. So I'm going to talk us through the session layout in a minute and what to expect from today. But I'm going to start with some art materials. Now, for this session, I want you to choose whatever art materials are to hand or accessible to you, whatever you like using. If you're not used to making art and you don't really have any art materials, don't go out and buy any for this. Just literally use what you have. I would recommend that you use something with colour. So if you've got coloured pens, coloured pencils, great. If you've got paints, even better, in my opinion. Or even collage materials. Go and grab some scrap bits of paper that might be lying around. Some magazines would be great, actually, as well for this. So really, whatever you can, and try and be open and not worry too much about what materials you might have. Just watch this video and make alongside me as we go, and just see what happens. Try your best to be open to the process. So I'm going to be using watercolours today. These are Arteza. I got them on Amazon and I really like them. So I'm going to be using them. I just love watercolours, so they're always my go-to media of choice. And the other things that you'll need, as well as your art materials and some paper, a couple of sheets, 2-3 max should be fine. As well as them, you must have some kind of plant. It can be a real plant, a fake plant, doesn't matter, but some kind of plant, and any size will do, as long as it's within view of where you're sitting. If it's a small one like this, I think that would be great because you can pick it up and move it around, and that's going to be helpful for this session. So this is my plant, which I've just bought and I love it. I need to repot it, but I'll do that at some point, hopefully soon. And finally, grab a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, or if you finished work for the day, maybe a glass of wine, and just get comfortable. Please feel free to pause this video whenever you want to, whenever you want a break, whenever maybe I'm going too quickly and you need a bit more time on some of the art activities. Go ahead and pause it. Take your time with it. You can keep revisiting this if you want to, and just have fun. I really invite you to have fun, and yeah, just enjoy the act of making art with really no judgment from anyone else, and no expectation. So today, what we're going to be doing, I'll talk you through the activities we're going to be doing now. So we're going to start with a quick warm-up to kind of get you feeling creative. Maybe you haven't been creative recently or at all, and you feel like you need something to just kind of get you in that mind frame. So we'll do some really quick, fun, creative activities first. And you'll just need a pen or a pencil and some paper for them. Then we're going to do what's called observational drawing. So what that entails is some time really studying your subject. So our subject today is going to be our plant. So studying our subject and really getting a feel for how to represent that somehow on paper using whatever medium we're using. And then we're going to use those tools and techniques that I'll talk you through to do a final piece which represents our plant in some kind of way. So the session should take 50-ish, 45, 50-ish minutes. But again, if you want to pause and take a break whenever, please do. That's absolutely fine. So shall we get started and actually get making some artwork? So I've got some notes on the wall just behind the camera here, behind you. So I'm going to just keep glancing at them occasionally to make sure I'm staying on track with everything. Yes, but let's begin with our warm-up. So take a pencil or a pen, either's fine. I'm going to use a pen because I think you'll be able to see it much more clearly then. And I'll keep showing you as I go what I'm making. I'll keep sort of, turning it around so you feel like you've got a little bit of a visual guide as well as my description. So we're going to have, and I've got my phone here to time me, we're going to have 30 seconds. Be strict with yourself on this if you can. Grab your timer as well. We're going to have 30 seconds to draw a plant. It doesn't have to be our plant, it can be any plant. This is just to get us using our art material and in this kind of creative zone. Okay, so I'm going to set my timer and begin when I do. Okay, if you don't have a timer yourself, begin when I do. So 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so I'm just going to do a smallish plant because I know that we don't have a lot of time. And I want to save some of this page for a couple of the other exercises. So I'm just going to kind of invent it. I'm just inventing here. Okay, so we've got 5 seconds left. 3, 2, 1, stop. Stop what you're doing. So my very quick little plant kind of looks similar-ish, I guess, to this one. Okay, now I want you to shade your plant in some kind of way with some colour. When I say shade, I mean colour. That's a bit of an art school term. So add colour to it. So you might be collaging, you might be painting, you might be using your coloured pencils that would actually work really well here. And paints, you can use acrylics, you can use watercolours, you can use whatever suits you really, whatever you have. So you're going to have a minute now to fill it with colour. So I'm going to start my timer again. Set it for a minute. So if you want to, again, follow along with me, then start when I do. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. And we're just, as I said, getting a feel for our art materials. Maybe we've dug some out of the back of the cupboard and we really haven't maybe used them in a long time or even ever, some of us potentially. I think over lockdown some people ventured out and bought some materials maybe online or something and maybe used them once or twice and then kind of got bored. I think that's what some of my friends have definitely done. Got 30 seconds left. So yeah, this is really just trying to encourage you with this time limit to release too much expectation or judgment on yourself and know that you really can't do very much in 30 seconds. So we've got 10 seconds left, so just finish off. 10, 5 seconds, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Ooh, terrible noise. There we go. So I just really roughly, as you can see, started to fill my plan with colour. Okay. So I hope you're feeling a little bit like, okay, I can do this. I've got my materials. I've remembered how to pick up a pen or a pencil and started to investigate what it feels like again to do this. So now what I want you to do is we're going to bring our plant into the picture, literally. I'm going to put it there. I really hope it's not too distracting for you if it's there. I think that should be okay, but it means I can see it quite clearly. Now we're going to do another exercise, and this isn't time limited, but you can carry on this same sheet of paper because we don't need to be precious about this at all. I'm taking my pencil now. I'm hoping, let me just test it. Hoping you'll be able to see if I use pencil. Yeah, you should be able to. Great. So we're going to start by choosing an angle that we like the look of, that we kind of want to draw. Now I quite like this angle because we can see some bigger leaves at the back and the smaller ones kind of coming down towards the front. That's quite nice. I like that. So choose an angle of your plant, get comfortable. We're going to have about 5 minutes for this section. So don't rush it too much, but again, remember that this is just to help you kind of get into the feel of the art making. So what I want you to do is to take a moment, 30 seconds, a minute, whatever you can. Really, the longer the better, actually. And just take a minute to really sort of investigate your plant. Now, what I mean by investigate is touch it, really look at it, really look at the detail on your plant, on its leaves, on its stems, and feel it. Feel the leaves, feel what texture it has. Maybe some leaves are one texture and some leaves are another. On mine, the smaller leaves are a bit smoother and the bigger ones are kind of soft and a little bit fuzzy. So just start to, you might feel silly doing this, but really it's about bringing you into this moment, and the active feeling and that touch and connecting with that touch is a really good way to kind of ground yourself. Now, if you can, get really up close and have a look at some of the detail on your plant. Now, I want you to start investigating by recording what you can see on your paper. Now, at this point, we're not drawing the whole plant. There's no need for us to sort of start mapping it out from top to bottom. What I want us to do is just be really curious here and inquisitive, and create some marks on our paper that kind of represent maybe the feeling of the leaf of the plant, maybe the details on the plant. I can see some beautiful there are some veins coming. Maybe I'll show you some veins coming off, and then it gets quite mottled here. You can see like this sort of dark to mid green here, and then there's obviously much lighter in the middle. I really like that. So I want to invite you to start to record, as I call it, some of those observations on paper. So I'm going to draw, what I'm going to start with is I'm going to just draw the edge of this leaf here. Now what we're doing is kind of like picking a section that you find really interesting and zooming in, drawing it as big as you can on your piece of paper. Again, you can just use a pencil or a pen for this. So it's not necessarily about the shape of the leaf at this point, but we're just thinking of, we're zooming in and we're thinking about the real detail in that leaf that maybe you don't normally stop to look at. I certainly don't. It's quite amazing. So I'm going to start kind of just capturing some of the like lines that I can see along the edge of the leaf. So I'll show you what I'm doing. I've drawn the edge of the leaf here, the bottom edge of it. And I'm going to start sort of trying to capture, using pencil, some of that sort of, those patterns, those mottled patterns. And they sort of flow quite nicely. There's some really interesting shapes. Now at this point, don't worry about being too precious. Don't worry about really what you're making on the paper. The idea of this is to help to familiarise you with your plant, your plant and its leaves, and to really see it as if you're seeing it for the first time. Really see it, really notice it. So I'm trying to recreate a little bit sense of that kind of mottled effect with lots of different lines. So I've done some lines sort of coming inwards, and then these little circles kind of to represent the idea of it sort of getting smaller and fading from dark to light. And if you want to, at this point, when you've started to sort of depict some interesting part of your leaf, if you want to start bringing colour in, then you're welcome to. Now, my recommendation here is not to add the colour to whatever you've just sketched, but to really think about what colour your plant is. Now, obviously a lot of them are green, not all of them, but a lot of them are green. But we can see on this one we've got a dark green, a sort of lime green, and almost like a cream colour as it goes in towards the middle. So at this point, what I want you to do is start to create what I call a colour key. So find a colour, whether you're collaging or using pencil, find a colour that is as close as possible to your plant, or at least one of the colours in your plant. And I'm just going to start, I'll show you in a second, but I'm going to start creating a colour key to represent the various shades that are present in this plant. Now here I'm kind of still looking at that one particular leaf, but you can start to look at the plant as a whole if you want as well, and all the colours that might be present in it. So I'm mixing, if you're using paint, go for it. Really get mixing if you need to try and find a colour that's as close as possible to the ones that you can see. And if you're using pencils, try mixing them as well. Try overlapping some, one on top of the other. If you can't quite find a shade of pencil that really works. So this is what I call a colour key. I'm just going to run there. just starting to depict some of the colours I can see in my plants. So I've got the dark green, the lime green, and the sort of lighter green. I even need a more sort of cream tone, I think, as well. The idea of this is you're just taking one element of your plant at a time and really taking some time with it, sitting with it, focusing on it. You're not trying to do everything all at once. You're not trying to get the shape of it and the texture of it and the colour of it and make it look 3D. And we're not doing any of that. We're just really taking our time to get to know the different elements that make up our plant and how we perceive it, how we see it. So I'm not going to include, I mean, you can if you want, but I'm not going to include the earth or the pot. I'm just going to really focus on the plant. Now I can see, sadly, it's got a little bit of a brown leaf here. Can you see that there? It's got kind of a spot on it. Those of you who are green-fingered and know things about plants will probably be shouting at the screen, "Oh, take it off," or give it more water, or put it in the sun for a bit or something. I'm afraid I'm a bit of a novice when it comes to actually looking after plants. However, when it comes to drawing and painting and recreating imagery of plants, I'm a bit more practiced. So what I'm doing is I'm even taking some of the colours that I can see in that brown spot. Don't be ashamed if your plant's a bit brown and crispy at the edges. There's no shame here. Try and embrace it. Try and investigate whatever you can see in those parts of it too. So I can see a sort of moss green colour surrounding that spot, and then it becomes quite brown, quite a dark brown, and then it actually gets much lighter in the middle again. So I'm going to capture maybe those three sort of tones: the mossy colour, the dark brown, and then a sort of lighter, much lighter brown. If you're using watercolours, one of my techniques for getting lighter colours is just using much more water and much less of the paint. So there I've captured that like dark spot, the tones. Okay, so carry on investigating your plant for a while if you want. You can pause the video, like I said, and really take your time with this if I'm going too quickly. But I'm going to start to move us on to the next part of this session now. So this is the observational drawing part. And what you've done here already is kind of the groundwork for what comes next. It's going to help you to have tuned in to this type of observing. There we go. This type of observing that we don't normally do necessarily day to day. We don't normally sit and study an object, because why would we? This is a really good excuse for you to just slow down and do that, and have a reason to do that. So this exercise should help with this next bit that we're going to move on to, the observational drawing. So I'm going to pull out this piece. So if you've got another piece of paper, grab it now. Keep this with you or in sight, because it will be useful for what comes next. Okay. Now, we're going to actually start creating an image of our plant now. And I'm describing a really particular way of looking at the plant and drawing it and getting it on paper and adding colour to it. But I really want to invite you to be as individual and creative as you like here with this. Really take your time to do what feels right for you during this process. And really just remember that we're here to relax and we're here to just be present. So if your plant ends up looking completely different from the plant that's sitting in front of you, that's fine. Mine probably will. If you want to go down the route of sort of a more abstract image, that's also fine. This process will still work for you. So really just go with it, however you like. So the observational drawing side, grab your pencil or pen again. And one of the main techniques here is to look more at the plant or the object in front of you than your paper. Now it might feel a bit strange and a bit alien, but trust me. Might be good actually just to use pencil if you've got one there. And begin by using quite faint lines so that we can go over them afterwards if we need to, or maybe rub them out if we need to. So again, remember this notion of looking more at the object than the paper. You can look at the paper, but the idea is to really capture what you can see and put it on paper. So what I'm doing is I'm going to start by mapping out the spaces that I can see, the space. So I'm going to just do a basic circle for the pot, just so I've got a reference. I'm probably not going to put any detail on that. So I can see I've got some stems coming up here. So if you notice, I'm really trying to focus on what those stems, where those stems are placed, maybe how long they are, how thin they are, how thick they are. I'm not looking too much at the paper. Now do this, you can have as long as you like on this, but I invite you to be quite quick with your movements. As you can see, I'm doing quite quick, quite sporadic, quite spontaneous, so that we're not worrying about what's going on here, but we're really looking at the shapes of our leaves and on our plant. The arrangement as well of them. So I'm mapping out, there's a leaf here, I'm mapping that out really roughly. And as you can see, I'm not being precious about, can you see that? I'm not being precious about my lines overlapping each other. It doesn't matter. I'm just creating a rough shape of each individual leaf, because I find that much easier than trying to figure out this one's behind this one and this one's in front of this one. This stage we don't need to. When it's observational drawing in this way, in my way, it's much more about just mapping out those lines, getting a feel for what goes where, really. So we've got a little leaf, my little brown leaf coming down here, bigger leaf beside it. And this is a really good practice for getting things in proportion. If you struggle to draw things in proportion, which I do, particularly when I'm drawing things like people or animals, this is a good exercise in getting the proportions of things, because your eye is so focused on the object. That you're really starting to be able to measure and judge those proportions and those distances. You'll probably surprise yourself. Okay. So I have just a couple of the bigger leaves there at the top. And mine are actually going to go off the paper, but that's fine. It doesn't matter. Plants grow, don't they? They have a life of their own, and I'm going to try and not feel too restricted by the size of the paper here, and just let it be how it is. I've got this big one here that goes. Oh, you can't. I'll show you this big one here. It's kind of towards the back. There's some really nice big sort of veins and patterns on it. And then one final one here. So my image looks like a mess. Oops. It's a real mess, but it's intentionally a mess. So the idea is that we've just got our plant and its layout and its proportions and its leaves mapped out on the paper. So this is where we can come in with the colour or a pen, if you like, and start to actually fill out the bits that you like. Maybe erase some of the bits that you're not quite sure about and redo them if you want. You can really take your time at this point, because this is quite an important point of sort of getting your plant to look like your plant, essentially. So what I'm going to do is, I don't have a rubber, and that's intentional because I will use a rubber far too much if I have one. So I'm challenging myself here. If you want to grab one, go for it. And if you want to start removing some lines that don't work or where you kind of overlapped some lines, go for it. But I think I quite like this sort of sketchy look. So I'm going to start with painting, I think, yeah. So what you can do is, if you like, if you've got a pen, you can start to go over your lines if you want, the ones that you're really happy with. Keep looking again back at your plant. Keep seeing if you know the angle of that leaf looks about right. Great. If you've got the wave of the edge of your leaf there, great. Now at this point, we're still not thinking about the texture yet. We're still just building it gradually. I'm not going to use a pen at this point. I might use some afterwards, but as I said, I like how sketchy this looks. So I'm going to start painting. Now, I'm going to use my colour key as reference. That's actually really handy now, because I've got the paints that I squeezed out of the tubes already here, so I know how they're going to look on the paper. And I'm going to start just really simply. I'm using quite a lot of water here to keep it very light still and kind of sketchy. Really simply start adding some colour to my leaves. Now if you're collaging, you can maybe pause the video because you might need a little bit of time if you're collaging, I think. Potentially, unless you're very organised and you have sort of lots of imagery laid out already. You've got it all in kind of colour order, and you know you can grab your yellows here and your greens here. I mean, great. But you may want to pause the video and take a little bit of time to get some of those colours that you need from out of your magazines, from your collage materials. And then what I would recommend is shredding them and starting to lay them out, starting to map out where they might fit on your image. Itchy eye. Okay, so I've just started, it's going to start running, but that's okay. Just started to capture that green, that sort of darker edge and lighter centre. And again, I'm not exploring its texture at this point, or even any of the detail. Just getting the basis of those colours down. And the nice thing about watercolours that I find is that you can really take your time with them. You can really, if you add enough water, you can really get a lot of the image, your object, covered before the paint dries. And in that way you can then start to see, okay, this is it as a whole. What does it need? Does it need some contrast here? Does it need a darker bit here and a lighter bit here? And if it's still wet, you can start to sort of play with it a little bit. Maybe removing some paint in some areas, maybe adding more paint and blending it in other areas. I really like that process. Ooh, it's going to drip. So I'm kind of keeping to the darker green tones currently around the edges of the leaves. Keep looking back at your plant. Keep that observation that we described at the start. Keep that observation going. So, you may want to pause your video, go away, take a break. If you're painting, let it dry and come back to it. That's what I sometimes enjoy doing. We'll just continue getting some of that colour on to the page. And this is kind of, in watercolour terms, this is kind of creating a bit of a wash on the page. Kind of the background, the main background colour, as it were. Okay, so we've got about 10 more minutes of this session left. So I feel like this is a good point to talk about how important it is that we all take a break during our work day, during our normal day. Take a break, have a cup of tea. And I know this word is bounced around a lot, particularly at the moment, but the word mindful, I want to kind of bring in here because it's so important that we just slow down and take a moment as much as we can. It's not always easy, I know. But take a moment to just pause and just notice what's going on. Notice what's going on around you. Notice what you might be feeling, any physical sensations, emotional ones. A really good trick of mine to sort of help slow me down during a busy day is when I put the kettle on, I then use that time as a pause time. I don't allow myself to do anything during the time the kettle's boiling. And that means that I start to just relax. Sorry, I got a bit engrossed in the painting there. I start to just relax or allow myself. It can be hard at first, but I start to allow myself to just relax. Just be present, take some deep breaths. Ground my feet on the floor. Notice, as I said, notice what's going on around me, what's going on in me. And this mindful observational technique, you can bring into these little moments to just bring you into that present, bring you out of your head a little bit, bring you back into your environment. I think that's something that's so important. Just noticing what's around you again. It's a really nice technique. I use it quite a lot with my clients, particularly those who suffer from anxiety or panic attacks. It's a really nice technique, this just observing of an object or your room, the room that you're in, just observing. And seeing if you can notice something new, something different that you hadn't noticed before. It can be really helpful for those those clients who need a slightly more active way of relaxing, but still one that's going to allow them to rest for a few minutes. Okay. So I invite you to try that if you want. Let the kettle boil. Choose an object. Maybe it's a plant. Maybe it's the kettle. Sounds silly, but anything. Just take a moment to look and notice and be present with it. And challenge yourself to find something that you hadn't seen before. And notice how that feels too. So I'm going to show you how I've got, it's looking a little bit like an octopus, I think, at the moment. Always dripping there at the bottom, but I quite like that. So, now that I've got my main colour palette on there, so I've got my browns, you can see, some browns, we've got some greens, we've got some yellows, and we've got some kind of whites as well. Now that I've got that main colour palette on there, I want to start layering on top of it some of these textures that we observed earlier. Now you might want to use pencil or pen again for this. Obviously, if your paint's wet, be mindful of that. Maybe that's the effect you want to go for. Maybe you want to explore that and see what that looks like. But maybe you want to let this dry and come back to it and add your sort of details on over the top later. What I'm going to do, because I want this video to be a one-take wonder, I'm going to just go in and start adding some detail whilst it's still wet. I mean, it started to dry a little bit at the top where I started painting, so that's great. So I'm using my sketch that I did earlier as reference. I'm just going to start trying to create some kind of like mottled effect as I did there on my plant. It was quite nice to draw it earlier and sketch it out in that way because it made me more familiar with the look of the leaf. It made me more familiar with the texture of it and the lines that are present. So I'm going in still quite roughly and quite quickly. Oh, you can see it when I do that. I'm going in quite roughly and quite quickly here. And just I'm dotting the paint. Now this is going to be a challenge if you want to really capture that detail. It's going to be a bit of a challenge if you're collaging. However, you could be quite clever and find some images of plants and start to take some of the texture that's actually in those images and adapt it to your piece. And that might work really nicely. Now again, I want to remind you not to worry about the outcome, not to worry. I'm instructing you to create an image of an object and to make it look as similar to it as possible, yes. But if it doesn't matter. The purpose of this, again, is really just to be here, to be present, and to give yourself this time out. So I'm going to carry on doing this for a little while. And I'm just dotting to create that. Can you see there the mottled, oh, it's running, that mottled texture, dotting. Oh, watch it run, that's quite nice. It's looking more and more like an octopus. So I'm going to keep doing that. And as the paint in some areas dries, I'm going to keep adding to it. Now I want you to kind of take your time with this part. I'm rushing a bit because I want to show you all the steps and still be within sort of 45, 50 minutes. So keep doing that stage for as long as you need to. And the final part of this is to go in once again with your pencil or pen and to add the final bits of detail that you want to add, that you want to maybe highlight if you've already put them in quite effectively, or if you haven't managed to, like I haven't so far, haven't managed to really capture the detail in the way that you want to with the paint or the medium you're using. Try doing it with the pencil and just see what that looks like. I'm just going to grab a new pencil. And what I quite enjoy doing, actually, particularly when I'm using watercolours, is going in with coloured pencils over the top when it's dry, or even using felt tips. So if you want to go mixed media, go for it. Oh yeah, that's quite nice. Now I'm just playing and experimenting. I'm really not worrying too much about what it is going to look like. And I'm just trying to pick out those sort of veins, the veiny texture that I can see that I really like. Sort of wiggly, it's kind of like little blobs. Quite intricate. I'll see if I can show you. Here. Just trying to add some like wiggly lines there. Using the pen and pencil. So, get creative, get adventurous. If you're thinking, wow, this just looks nothing like my plant, I hate it, keep going, push through, keep with it, keep adding, try new materials, and if all else fails, start again. That's fine. But I really, really would recommend bearing with as long as you can, and trying to tolerate that judgment, self-judgment, and that uncomfortable feeling that might be coming up with, oh, it's not looking how I want it to, it doesn't look like Izzy's, or it doesn't look how, I know I could do better, it's not meeting my expectations. Try your best to sit with that, because that's a really useful process to embrace and to be with and to push through. Sometimes you'll really surprise yourself when you do push through it and you keep going. Now I'm going to carry on my painting, and I'm going to either insert an image of it finished at the end of this video if I can. Fingers crossed, technology is not my strong point. Or I will make sure that Jo has a copy of the photos so that you can just see for reference what I've made, and she can send you that to go alongside this video. So that brings us to the end, and I want to say thank you so much for being with me today, sitting with this process, going with it, being open to it, participating and engaging, and giving yourself a chance, giving yourself a space and to be quiet, to relax, to switch off, and to be present. And I really hope that you got some of those qualities from this video. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, or send Jo an email and let her know your thoughts on this. Be really good to hear them. So I'm going to leave it there for today, but thank you again and take care. I'll see you hopefully next time in another video. Fingers crossed. See you guys. Bye.